Act 2 Start of UA Chapter 14. Narrator. Everyone began introducing themselves and giving a basic rundown of their quirks, starting in seating order. Which started with Tensei Ida, who has a quirk called Engine, which grants him engine-like protrusions on his arms that allow him to move at extraordinary speeds. Thanks to Engine, Tensei can dash through long distances in a short amount of time. This makes him suited for missions that involve reaching a faraway place as fast as possible, chasing after an object moving at high speeds, or even escaping from an overwhelming threat. The mufflers found on his engine can be removed, with new ones regenerating in their place over time. These new mufflers may increase in power and efficiency, assuming he puts himself through massive strain due to quirk usage, as Engine will naturally adapt to the newfound intensity. Removing the mufflers is noted to be quite a painful process though, as he must forcefully pull them out. Tensei introduces himself and informs the class that he is 17 years old. And tells the class that he is a part of the prestigious Ida family, known for heroics for many generations now. Next was in seat number 2. Suniku Iwoki, better known as Yuwabami, who has a quirk called Serpentress. Serpentress grants her a trio of living snakes as part of her hair, which are implied to be a part of her biology. The snakes have excellent senses, which she found to be very useful as a child, during a landslide inside her town, when she utilized them in order to locate hidden missing disaster victims. Thus, she wishes to specialize in rescue missions when she gets her hero's license. She also states that her snakes carry a venom that does not kill but does paralyze those they bite for 60 seconds. Multiple bites do not change the duration. But biting a victim after their 60 seconds is up, does paralyze them for an additional 60 seconds. She mentions that people can build up an immunity to her venom over time, however, stating her parents have been bitten by accident, so many times that they no longer experience their effects. She mentions her age as being 17, and is observed to be very excited, and not the slightest bit nervous speaking in front of the class. Next, was in seat number 3. Mo Kamiji, who has a quirk called Blazing Hair. Mo doesn't speak much about her quirk, and is swift and blunt with the utility of her quirk. That being it primarily utilizes being the ability for her to grab chunks from her hair, which she can then throw like fireballs or manipulate into additional weapons like swords, spears, and other objects. She can also manipulate the flames to allow her to fly through the air. Though it requires intense concentration, and of course, she can start fires with her hair. She mentions that heat doesn't actually seem to emit from her flaming hair until the moment she plucks it from her head of hair, despite it clearly being on fire as she is speaking. Demonstrating this by lifting paper inside her flaming hair, which does not ignite, until she grabbed a clump of flaming hair, and removed it, only then catching on fire. She states that she is currently 16 years old. She appears to be very calm about talking in front of people during the fact. Next, was in seat number 4. Shota Aizawa, who has a quirk called Erasure. Erasure allows him to cancel out the quirk of anyone he looks at. When Erasure is activated, Shota is able to disable a person's quirk until he closes his eyes. Shota only needs one part of the target's body to be within his sights for Erasure to take effect. His brief explanation is all everyone needed to get seriously intimidated and wowed by his quirk. It was by all rights busted strong. He mentions as he returns to his seat with a tired expression that he is 17 years old. He doesn't appear to be bothered by speaking in front of large crowds, based on this instance, but he does however appear really tired. Next, was in seat number 5. Ryuko Tatsuma, who has a quirk called Dragon. Dragon allows her to transform into a dragon, a powerful mythological creature. This form grants her abilities commonly associated with dragons, including flight, powerful jaws, claws, and of course size. Her explanation is brief, and she only briefly makes mention of her convictions for wanting to become a hero, being related to one of her friends from high school planting the idea in her head, and then she ran with the idea, never looking back. Her age is 17. Next, was in seat number 6. Kaina Tsutsumi and his quirk is. For a moment, the boy hesitated, choking up. Remembering the truth, that had been snatched away from him, years ago now. His true quirk. Chi manipulation. But now, that wasn't the case. Those days, that power. His quirk, was gone. And in its place. A quirk that refuses to die. Shared and inherited from the woman he calls mom. Their quirk remains. And finally he spoke, finally coming to terms with the fact, that the boy. Kaina quirk, and everything that made him so. Had long since died. In his place, was not a shell, but the blossoms of a new man. Kaina Tsutsumi. Now proudly explaining his quirk. His quirk, is rifle. Stating before he began, that the quirk was and is the same as his mother, Lady Nagant. Letting the class know, that their homeroom teacher, was in fact his mother. Before continuing. With this quirk, the users can protrude and retract a rifle gun from their right elbow. Kaina and Kaina bends their arm up so that their hand is to their shoulder and opens a cavity in the elbow, from which the rifle comes out of. The rifle seems to be made out of organic matter, using a semi-liquid sinew as a retractable bipod if needed. They load the bullets they make with their moldable hair into a hole that opens up on their palm, which they use to reload. As the rifle is made up of organic matter and doesn't require an explosive charge, beyond internally produced combustible gases, additional propellant from outside sources are not required to fire off their bullets. They can also manifest a tendril of flesh from their arm that she can curl up and act as a rifle scope, allowing them to make more precise shots if needed. Another attribute of their gun is that they can dramatically increase its power output, causing the gun to expand and bulge out. This greatly increases the velocity of their shots, though it does run the risk of jamming their gun. They can remove parts of their hair to mix and mold the fibers like epoxy putty into all kinds of special bullets, such as hollow point bullets, bullets with radio capabilities, or bullets that curve. These hair bullets harden and become just as strong as any ammo. Mentioning that his mother tends to keep bullets of these special variety in a utility belt for later and fires them from her rifle, as well as creates them from her hair on the fly. Something he has been learning to do more and more consistent and accurately. The bullets possess no gunpowder that burn out quickly, allowing for a greater effective range than conventional rounds. They also maintain their shape during and after impact, which makes for great penetrating power against both flesh and inorganic matter, and are caseless, leaving behind no brass shell casings that would identify Kaina's original sniping position. This also allows the bullets to be simultaneously reusable and easily disposable. According to his mother, her rifle has an effective range of 3 kilometers. But he does mention his gun has many modifications that make his unique from his mother's, such as a much larger caliber size, self-sustaining incendiary capabilities, and other unmentioned things, further stating his range in theory should be even greater. Kaina is noted for making zero mentions of his weaknesses, or his close combat capabilities with the quirk. He states that his sole goal of wanting to become a hero, is to prove to the world, that he can use his mother's gun, to save everyone, without killing. Which puzzled many, how do you use a gun quirk, without killing? He mentions he is 17 before returning to his seat. Kaina is noted for having a very charismatic approach to being in front of crowds such as this. Next, was in seat number 7. Rumi Usajiyama, who has a quirk called, Rabbit. Rumi states that the rabbit quirk grants her rabbit-like anatomy and abilities. The quirk gives her enhanced senses of hearing and smelling, as she was always able to accurately pinpoint the location of a fight from far away during middle school and elementary. Rabbit also grants her functional rabbit features like long ears, large, strong legs and a fluffy tail. She also possesses a rabbit's survival instincts, which alerts her of any nearby danger. Rabbit provides immense leg strength. Through it, she can move around by bouncing and attack by stomping or kicking. One single ground stomp is capable of generating strong enough wind pressure to disturb the wind in a given area. She makes mention that the quirk wasn't always super powerful, but through her persistence in bettering herself in constant gym visits and using her body weight to work out at home. She's made the existing effects and strengths of her and her quirk even greater matched in a fight. She makes brief mention of her age being 18 and her reasons for becoming a hero, being that everyone, her entire life said she couldn't become a hero, because her quirk wasn't suited for such a thing, people constantly making fun of her for having the quirk, and constantly being looked down on people for having a quirk that they felt made her look cute, which prompted them to never take her serious. Lead to her lust and desires of becoming a hero. The best hero. With that, sitting back down. She showed very clearly during her speech no sign of concern when talking to a crowd. Next, was in seat number 8. Yu Takayama, who has a quirk called gigantification. Gigantification allows her to drastically increase her size to gigantic levels. While gigantified, you can easily subdue smaller targets and fight similarly sized foes on equal footing, or swiftly defeat smaller foes, though it would be fairly dangerous to do so, on the target's end of things. The extra mass also grants her enough strength to destroy buildings and other structures with ease. Yu's gigantification's limit is 2062 centimeters, which is 67 feet and 8 inches, with Yu being unable to assume any height in between her normal and maximum ones. Due to her massive size after transforming, she needs a minimum of space in order to move properly, making the quirk impractical in small or enclosed spaces. Yu mentions embarrassedly, that when greatly frustrated, angry, or sexually flustered you may accidentally activate her gigantification, implying that she still doesn't have full control over her quirk. She briefly mentions her age to be 16, and it's apparent to everyone in the room, that she's very shy, and hasn't yet come out of her shell in life. Despite her shyness, choosing to tell why she chose to try and become a hero. Stating that she always liked how confident and brave heroes were growing up, and that she wished to be as brave and confident as they were when she grew up. Getting a bit personal for a moment, she states that for a moment, in middle school she had given up on her dream to become a hero, due to excessive bullying. But that someone she really looked up to, stood up for her, and believed that she had a better chance than anyone else in her school at completing that dream. And she's been chasing it ever since. She briefly looked towards Kaido in the moment, who was getting elbowed teasingly by Rumi during the fact. Next, was in seat number 8. Namuri Kayama, who has a quirk called somnambulist. Somnambulist allowed her to put targets to sleep by exuding a sleep-inducing aroma from her bare skin, which can come from skin anywhere except her neck, ears and face. Somnambulist is described as being more effective on males than on females, giving Namuri an obvious advantage against men. Regardless of that, anyone who breathed in enough of the aroma would eventually fall into a deep slumber, which would make it difficult for opponents to confront her at close range. She makes mention, bravely, of the weakness of her quirk, being the first to announce their quirk's weakness thus far. Stating it is possible to avoid the effects of somnambulist simply by not breathing in the aroma. This put Namuri at a disadvantage against opponents who had their mouths covered by masks that could function as air filters. Alternatively, an opponent could cover their mouth with something to hold their breath. Somnambulist's sleeping aroma was also less effective against women. She also makes mention that she has encountered a few men and women who for some strange reason, are dazed by her aroma, but never pass out. No matter the dosage, but makes mention that the statistics for such an event is 1 in every 30 people. She mentions that she just wanted to become a hero, because it would give her an excuse to feed into her sadistic side, getting to see men and women alike run from her. Villains specifically. I hope. Now that everyone was a little uncomfortable, and now aware they were in the presence of a freak. She mentions that her age is 17, and returns to her seat. She's not scared to speak in crowds, and seems a little bit too comfortable. Next, was in seat number 10. Alden Yakashima, who goes by Odin Yakashima, whose quirk is called Holy Light. Odin explains a brief piece of his past, his origins as to where the name for his quirk came. Claiming that he was born on a business trip in Italy, in a holy church inland. Delivered by a holy man. Priest, when he was born, he was noted to be illuminated with the quote. Light of the Father. And the priest deemed that his quirk was holy and later made sure that on his medical records the quirk was named, Holy Light. Now explaining his quirk in detail. Odin's quirk allows for him to create a sword, shield and armor out of light from either sun, stars, moon, or artificial light such as light bulbs, phone screen light or car headlights. As long as it's a form of light. He states that his quirk is strongest when the power is harnessed from sunlight and is weakest when it is harnessed from artificial light. And explains that the armor, sword, and shield that is formed by this light materializes into being. Are special in being that the sword and the shield cannot be destroyed if created by sunlight. But states that his armor is rather lacking in that same ideal. He states any other form of light he forms his weapon and armor from, comes as a cost of quality, making them breakable. This is all he explains, before briefly mentioning his age to be 17. And briefly stating that he wishes to become a hero, so that he can protect his father's, God's, people. Well, he's religious, very religious, everyone can see that. Kaido and Kigo took an increased interest in the boy. But only briefly. Next, was in seat number 11. Sean Coulter, who had a quirk called, Combo. His quirk worked exactly as it sounded, sort of like a video game. Where each successful strike that lands, stacks, and for every second successful strike, his speed and strength in his strikes increased by 2x, the effects of which max at a stack of 10x. The effects of which cancel or restart if he is hit, he misses a strike or goes 10 seconds without landing a hit. His age is 17, and he states he wanted to become a hero, to keep an eye on his religious, over-the-top friend Odin, who he tauntfully calls Walden. He is perceived to have no issue speaking in front of crowd, and seems rather playful and charismatic. Though a little too jokiative during the whole ordeal. Virgin activities if you ask me. Put myself in the book, Imma poke fun, credit to the quirk idea @dog. Next, was in seat 12. Tristan Kitano, who had a quirk called, Purified HDHD. Who keeps it short and sweet. His stamina is unmatched, his reaction speed can't be beat, his hyper-focus can't be defeated, and his overall speed is incredible. Lastly mentioning he's even faster if he has caffeine, but it sacrifices his stamina drastically. Stating he only needs 4 hours sleep to operate for 18 hours. He states briefly that he is 17, and complains that he only came to become a hero, because his buddy Odin tends to get himself into trouble. Because he is truthful, no matter what, and that sometimes gets him into trouble. Also mentioning that Sean isn't exactly known for being very responsible. So, he had to come to keep them both in check. This news really shocked everyone. These guys all entered the exams, and got in that way, not via recommendations, they did all that. Because only one of them wanted to become a hero? How bold and unusual. Next, was in seat 13. Shinji Nishiya, who has a quirk called, Arbor. Arbor allows him to generate and control wood from any part of his body. Through Shinji is able to manifest tendrils of wood that seemingly sprout from his skin and then extend them over a long distance. These tendrils can come from anywhere on his body and he has full control over their actions, giving him a way to perform multiple tasks at once. Everyone just assumes his weakness to be fire. He makes no mention of his convictions to become a hero. And only that he is 18 years old. Next, was in seat 14. Hisashi Yamada, who has a quirk called, Voice. Which allows him to increase the volume of his voice, giving him the ability to create loud, high-pitched sounds. The sound that comes from Hisashi's mouth can reach extremely high levels, enough to incapacitate people by disrupting their eardrums, which may cause bleeding. The loud noise will also drown out other sound-based quirks, giving him an advantage against those quirk types in battle. He states his reason for wanting to become a hero as, I quote, I wanted to become a hero because I be wicked cool yo. End quote. He states that he is 17 before sitting down. Next, was in seat 15. Taishiro Toyomitsu, who has a quirk called, Fat Absorption. which grants him the ability to adhere any objects to his body and make them sink into his body fat upon contact with it. This quirk provides a high degree of protection, making Taishiro very resistant to blades, bullets, and attack-heavy quirks. Those who attempt to physically strike him may end up getting stuck to his body, allowing him the opportunity to restrain them. Fat absorption also lets him absorb the raw force behind enemy attacks and then release it back in a singular counterattacking punch. However, utilizing this technique requires him to burn down his fat as he stockpiles said force, weakening his defense in the process and leaving him practically powerless if the counterattack doesn't bring down the target. He states that he wants to become a hero, because his father was a police officer and a detective for the longest time, until he was forced to retire, and he wishes to carry on helping people in his name. Because he can't anymore. Then stating his age to be 16. Next, was in seat 16. Kigo Takami, who has a quirk called, Fierce Wings, which grants him a pair of large, red wings made up of dozens of feathers. He can freely manipulate each individual feather using their mind. The fully feathered pair of wings gives Kigo the ability to fly at extraordinary speeds. Feathers can be detached to perform individual tasks and he shares a telepathic connection with these feathers. The feathers are both stiff and flexible, as a single feather is strong enough to easily move a person around. They also vary in size, strength, and even cutting ability. Each individual feather acts as sensors that can feel people and objects around them by feeling the vibrations they produce. This widens the range of his senses, allowing him to utilize his feathers at a great range. He also mentioned he can use his feathers as bladed weapons if need be. He states that he is 16, and makes zero attempt to tell why he wants to become a hero. Walking back to his seat with hands in his pockets. He appears very charismatic and unafraid of speaking in crowds. Next, was in seat 17. Susugu Matarai, Wash if you're wondering, who has a quirk called, Clean Bubbler. Clean Bubbler allows him to create and control soapy water from his body. The stream is strong enough to keep several people in the air. He can also use the quirk to generate large soap bubbles from his inner tank that can be used to envelop targets and make them float. Wash can also use the bubbles to disinfect and aid the wounds of the injured. Also, he literally looks like a washing machine. Literally. He states that he is 16 years old, and makes no mentions or inquires about why he wanted to become a hero. He seems rather nervous and shy in front crowds. Like he hasn't yet came out of his shell. Next, was in seat number 18. Oboro Shirakumo, who has a quirk called, Cloud, which allows him to create different-sized clouds, of varying densities, enough to be touched and even to hold up the weight of one or several people. These clouds can float in the air, so he is capable of moving through the air by riding on them at great speed. The clouds can even store objects inside themselves. He states that he wants to become a hero so that he can make the world a place worth living. Stating thereafter that he is 17. He's very charismatic, friendly and inviting in front crowds. Next, was in seat number 19. Michael Hunt, who has a quirk called, Blinding, which allows him to take away the vision of anyone he looks at, causing them to have their vision ripped away from them to pitch black, but as soon as he blinks or looks away, it deactivates. He is found to be an American exchange student, who entered UA off of recommendations of pro-heroes in the USA. He makes no mention of his convictions towards becoming a hero, and states his age to be 16. Credit for the quirk idea and character name to at DinoBoy0915. And lastly, was in seat number 20. Bourbon Jackson, who has a quirk called, Puppet, which allows for him to put people under a sort of mind control. Any male he touches the shoulder of, unless their mental fortitude is greater than his own, will basically become a slave without thought, that listens mindlessly to his every command for the next 45 minutes. Any girl he touches the shoulder of, will fall under the same command, but for 1 hour. Those who have a really weak fortitude compared to him, won't even remember what he made them do while under his spell. This quirk works on a max of 3 people at a time. People under his spell will immediately return to their own control if they are splashed with high volumes of water, burnt, slapped, punched, kicked, pinched or bruised in any way. Shouting will do nothing, unless the person in question has a mental fortitude that's just slightly less than his own. Elsewise, has no effect. The affects also end, if he himself is attacked with enough force, to break bones, or tear muscles. Anyone who exits his spell, is left exhausted and drowsy for the next 4 hours. While he is explaining his quirk, Kaido unexplainably, and for a moment subconsciously, without realizing it, sense and feels the guy's emotions, intentions, and sense both the intentions to deceive, and malicious. As he's finishing up his explanation of his quirk, Kaido suddenly realizes that he's currently doing exactly what his quirk that was taken from him, allowed him to do. Which he shouldn't be able to do, since that quirk is gone. Bringing his gaze away from him and noticing subtle pockets of steam-colored and purple and pink emitting off his arms, chest and legs. Only Rumi and you seem to take notice, but they say nothing. Rumi does however kick the butt of Kaido's seat. He glanced back, and his eyes flickered brown. Before returning to his mother's in the moment he whispered to her. Something's off about him, and it's got my quirk factor acting strange. The guy states that he is 16, but Kaido returns sight onto him, still sensing malicious intent. He eyeballs the guy, who gives no statements of his convictions. Not trusting him as he returned to his seat. And as quickly as his quirk returned, it seems to vanish again. Or did it? With this, everyone prepared to head to the opening welcome ceremonies to those who were accepted into UA this year. End of